Jake Mason looked at the deal that seemed too good to be true. A 100-acre ranch for just $1. The old wooden fence went on forever under the hot sun, and the main house looked empty and forgotten. But when he opened the front door 3 hours later, he found out the seller forgot to tell him something important. Someone was already living there. He heard the sound first. Quiet footsteps upstairs, careful and slow, like someone trying to hide. Jake stopped in the doorway, still holding the door handle. The house was supposed to be empty. Bill Reynolds had promised this when they made the deal at the land office. Nobody's lived there for years, the man had said, looking away. You'll have it all to yourself. But there she was. A young woman came to the top of the stairs, her dark hair hanging loose. She wore a simple dress that looked old and worn. She didn't scream or run away. Instead, she looked down at him with a strange look. Not scared, but like she had been waiting for this moment. You must be the new owner, she said, her voice calm. I'm Emma Stone. I've been taking care of this place. Jake's mind raced. Taking care of it? For who? And why didn't Reynolds tell me about you? He looked at her face for lies, but only saw quiet strength that reminded him of his mother during hard times. The seller didn't say anyone was living here, he said. Emma walked down the stairs slowly, each step careful and graceful. Bill Reynolds doesn't know everything about this ranch, she said. There are things about this land that go deeper than what's written on any deed. She went to the window and pulled back the old curtain, showing the wide grassland outside. I've been here for 3 years. This place saved my life when I had nowhere to go. I've kept the roof fixed, the well clean, and the fences repaired. You could say we've been taking care of each other. Jake felt his plans changing. He'd saved every penny for 5 years to buy his own land, to build something that belonged to him. This ranch, even old and broken down, was everything he'd dreamed of. But now, standing in this dusty room with this unexpected woman, he knew his $1 purchase had brought him something much more complicated than property. Why did Reynolds sell it so cheap? He asked, knowing the answer would change everything. Emma turned from the window, and for the first time, he saw fear in her eyes. Because, she said quietly, he's not the only one who knows I'm here. And the others, they're not coming to make deals. Jake put his old leather bag on the wooden table, his mind full of questions. The afternoon light coming through the dusty windows made long shadows across Emma's face, and he could see the weight of secrets on her shoulders. Who's coming for you? He asked, keeping his voice steady despite the growing worry in his chest. Emma moved away from the window, her hands held tight in front of her. Men who believe I took something that belongs to them, she said. Something valuable enough that they've been hunting me for 3 years. Did you take it? She looked right at him, and he saw no lies there. I took something, yes. But it belonged to me long before they ever claimed it. Her voice carried pain from old wounds. My father's gold claim. He died in a mining accident, and these men showed up with fake papers saying he owed them everything. They took our house, our land, everything we had. Jake studied her face, seeing the look of someone who'd been pushed too far. He'd seen it in his own mirror during the worst years after his wife died. So you took back what was yours. I took the original deed and the survey maps proving our claim was real, Emma said. Documents that would destroy their operation if they ever saw the inside of a courthouse. She laughed bitterly. But getting to a courthouse alive is the challenge. The sound of horse hooves in the distance made them both freeze. Emma rushed to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to look out. Jake joined her, and together they watched 3 riders coming along the main trail. Still too far away to see clearly, but close enough to know they meant trouble. Is that them? Jake whispered. Emma shook her head. No, but... She paused, studying the riders more carefully. That's strange. Those horses are moving too fast for casual travelers, but too slow for urgency. Like they're searching for something. Jake felt his stomach tighten. He'd bought this ranch to escape problems, to build a simple life on his own terms. But watching those distant figures approach, he knew his $1 investment had pulled him into something far more dangerous than he'd expected. I should go, Emma said suddenly, turning from the window. I've already brought too much trouble to this place. You don't deserve to get caught up in my problems. Where would you go? Jake asked, though he wasn't sure why he cared. 3 hours ago, he'd never known she existed. She hesitated, and in that moment, he saw the truth. She had nowhere left to run. The riders were getting closer, their intentions unknown but their presence clearly threatening. How long before the dangerous ones find you here? He asked. Emma looked back toward the approaching riders, then met his eyes. If those men down there are who I think they are, she said quietly, they already have. The riders came closer, and Jake could see their faces now. Hard men with the kind of rough features that came from years of taking what they wanted. They stopped their horses about 50 yards from the house, close enough to be a threat, but far enough to avoid immediate trouble. That's Cole Turner, Emma whispered, her voice tight with fear. He works for the Morgan brothers. If he's here, it means they finally found me. Jake watched as the 3 men spread out in a loose half-circle, blocking the main escape routes from the property. Their movements were practiced, coordinated. These weren't random travelers, they were hunters who'd found their prey. What exactly did you take from them? He asked, needing to understand what he was getting into. Emma moved away from the window and knelt beside a loose floorboard near the fireplace. With quick movements, she lifted it up and reached into the hidden space beneath. When she stood, she held a leather pouch and rolled papers. The deed to the richest gold claim in the territory, she said, unrolling one of the documents, and the survey maps showing exactly where the gold runs deepest. My father spent 10 years mapping every vein, every pocket of gold in those hills. The Morgan brothers killed him for it, then found out he'd hidden the real documents. Jake studied the detailed drawings on the map, noting the careful notes and measurements. This wasn't just a claim, it was a treasure map drawn by someone who knew every inch of the land. This is worth a fortune. Enough to buy half the territory, Emma confirmed, and enough to make them hunt me across 3 states. A sharp whistle from outside made them both turn toward the window. Cole Turner had gotten off his horse and was walking slowly toward the house, his hand resting casually on his gun belt. His companions stayed mounted, watching the area for any signs of movement. Emma Stone, Turner called out, his voice carrying clearly across the yard. We know you're in there. Time to settle this like civilized people. Jake felt his heart beat faster. 3 years of carpentry work had given him strong hands and steady nerves, but he'd never faced men like these. Still, looking at Emma's pale face, he knew he couldn't just hand her over to them. There's a back way out, she whispered urgently. Through the kitchen and down to the creek. You could slip away while they're focused on the front of the house. What about you? She smiled sadly. I'm tired of running. Maybe it's time to face them. Jake stared at her, hearing the giving up in her voice. She was ready to sacrifice herself so he could escape the mess his $1 purchase had created. But as Turner's footsteps got closer to the front porch, echoing like a countdown, Jake made a decision that surprised even him. No, he said firmly, moving to the window. This is my property now, and I don't recall inviting anyone onto it. Turner stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, looking up at the house with a cold smile that promised violence. Jake stepped onto the front porch, making sure Turner could see him clearly. The afternoon sun cast his shadow long across the old boards, and he kept his voice steady despite his racing heart. This is private property, he called out. You and your friends need to move along. Turner's smile got wider, but there was no warmth in it. Well, now. Looks like the little lady found herself a protector. He took another step closer, his spurs making noise with each movement. Thing is, friend, we're not here for trouble with you. Just need to have a talk with Miss Stone about some property that belongs to our employer. I don't see any legal papers, Jake replied, noting how Turner's companions had positioned themselves to cover all angles. Far as I know, anything on this ranch belongs to me now. Turner chuckled, a sound like gravel in a tin cup. Legal papers? That's funny. He pointed toward the house. See, the way we figure it, Miss Stone has been living on this land for years, probably going through anything valuable left behind by the previous owners. Wouldn't be surprised if she found some items that need to be returned to their rightful owners. Inside the house, Jake could hear Emma moving quietly, hopefully hiding the documents somewhere safer. He needed to buy her time, but Turner was clearly getting impatient. "Tell you what," Turner continued, his hand now resting openly on his gun handle. "Why don't you call her out here so we can all discuss this like reasonable folks? No need for anyone to get hurt over a simple misunderstanding." Jake felt sweat at the base of his neck despite the cooling afternoon air. 3 against 1 weren't odds any smart man would take, especially when he wasn't even sure what he was fighting for. But looking at Turner's cold eyes, he knew this wasn't about justice or legal claims. These men would take what they wanted no matter who got hurt. "She's not here," he lied, hoping his voice sounded more convincing than it felt. Turner's face darkened. "Now that's interesting, because my friend over there with the sharp eyes swears he saw 2 figures in that window not 5 minutes ago." He pointed toward one of the mounted men. "Sam's got a talent for noticing details others might miss." The man called Sam tipped his hat mockingly, his rifle resting casually across his saddle but ready for quick use. "Maybe you saw shadows," Jake suggested. "Old houses play tricks with the light." "Maybe," Turner agreed, though his tone suggested he believed nothing of it. "Or maybe you're protecting someone who's caused my employer considerable financial loss. That kind of loyalty to a stranger might make a man wonder about your own involvement in the situation." The threat was clear now. Turner was suggesting that Jake himself might be part of whatever theft they were pursuing. It was a clever move, give him a way out by abandoning Emma, or face the consequences of standing with her. Through the window behind him, Jake heard the softest creak of floorboards. Emma was still moving around inside, and Turner's sharp-eyed companion would notice any sound that carried. "Time's running short," Turner said, pulling out a pocket watch and making a show of checking it. "My patience tends to wear thin when folks aren't being honest with me." The silence stretched between them like a tight rope, ready to snap. Jake could feel Turner studying his face, searching for cracks in his resolve. Behind him, the house had gone completely quiet. Too quiet. Either Emma had found the perfect hiding spot, or she was preparing for something desperate. "You know what I think," Turner said, closing his pocket watch with a sharp click. "I think you bought this place knowing exactly what you'd find here. Maybe Miss Stone promised you a share of what she stole if you helped her stay hidden." "You think wrong," Jake replied, though he had to admit the accusation sounded believable. "I bought this ranch fair and square this morning. First time I've ever set foot on this property." Turner exchanged glances with his mounted companions, some silent communication passing between them. The man called Sam shifted in his saddle, and Jake caught the subtle movement of his hand toward his rifle. "Here's what's going to happen," Turner announced, his voice taking on the tone of a man used to being obeyed. "You're going to step aside, and we're going to search this house. When we find what we're looking for, we'll be on our way. Resist, and you'll be buried on your own property before sunset." Jake's mouth went dry, but he held his ground. "And if I refuse?" Turner's smile returned, colder than before. "Then we'll search it anyway, and you won't be around to complain about the mess we make." The front door opened behind Jake with a soft creak, and he felt his heart stop. Emma stepped out onto the porch, her chin raised defiantly despite the obvious fear in her eyes. She'd changed into riding clothes and had a small pack over her shoulder. "Enough," she said firmly. "This man has nothing to do with our business, Turner. Let's settle this between us." Turner's expression shifted to one of satisfaction, like a hunter who'd finally cornered his prey. "There's the sensible approach. Step down here, Miss Stone, and we can discuss terms." "The terms are simple," Emma replied, staying close to Jake's side. "You let him go, and I'll come with you willingly. No violence, no threats. Just me for his safety." Jake turned to stare at her. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," she cut him off softly. "You've already done more than anyone had a right to expect." Turner clapped his hands together once, the sound sharp in the afternoon air. "See how easy that was. Now, about those documents you took." "What documents?" Emma asked, her voice steady. "The ones that prove our employer's legitimate claim to the stone mine," Turner said patiently. "The papers your father hid before his unfortunate accident." My father died in a cave-in caused by your employer's unsafe mining practices, Emma shot back. There were no documents to hide. Turner's mask of politeness began to crack. Don't play games with me, girl. We know you have them, and we know they're here. The only question is whether we tear this place apart board by board to find them. Emma met his gaze steadily, but Jake could see her hands shaking slightly. Whatever documents she'd shown him were her only leverage, and she was about to lose them. That's when the sound of more approaching riders echoed across the valley, coming fast from the eastern trail. Turner spun toward the sound of approaching hoofbeats, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. The new riders were still distant, but they were coming hard and fast, dust rising in their wake like a brown cloud against the horizon. Sam. Turner barked to his sharp-eyed companion. How many? The man squinted into the distance, shading his eyes with one hand. For riders, maybe 5. Can't make out who they are from here, but they're pushing their horses hard. Turner's jaw tightened. Could be trouble. He turned back to Emma, his earlier patience completely gone. Change of plans. We're taking you and those documents now, before whoever that is decides to complicate things. I told you I don't have any documents, Emma insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Search the house, Turner ordered his men. Tear it apart if you have to. Jake stepped forward, blocking the porch steps. You're not going anywhere near my house. Turner's gun cleared its holster so fast Jake barely saw the movement. The cold metal pressed against his forehead, and he could smell the gun oil and leather from Turner's gloves. Last chance to be smart about this, Turner growled. Stand aside, or I'll put you down right here. The approaching riders were closer now, close enough that their individual horses could be distinguished. Jake could see they were riding in formation, disciplined and purposeful, not random travelers, but men with a mission. Cole Turner. The shout came from the lead rider, still 200 yards away but closing fast. Step away from those people. Turner's eyes widened in recognition, and for the first time since he'd arrived, Jake saw genuine concern cross his features. Damn, he muttered under his breath. Friends of yours? Emma asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Sheriff Davis, Turner replied through gritted teeth. Someone must have sent word ahead. He glanced back at his companions, who were looking increasingly nervous about their exposed position. The riders thundered closer, and Jake could now make out the distinctive glint of badge metal on the lead rider's vest. A sheriff and his deputies, riding like they meant business. But Turner's gun was still pressed against Jake's skull, and his finger was tight on the trigger. This complicates things, Turner said, more to himself than anyone else. But it doesn't change what needs to happen here. Sheriff Davis and his men were within shouting distance now, their horses lathered with sweat from the hard ride. The sheriff was a lean man with grey whiskers and the kind of weathered face that spoke of years dealing with situations exactly like this one. Drop your weapons, Davis called out as his group fanned out in a semicircle around Turner's men. Nobody needs to die today. Turner pressed the gun harder against Jake's forehead. Maybe nobody needs to die, he called back. But that depends on whether you're willing to let justice take its course. Justice? Davis laughed harshly. Is that what you call hunting down an innocent woman across 3 territories? Turner's face darkened. That woman is a thief who's been harboring stolen property. We're here on behalf of legitimate business interests to recover what belongs to them. The Morgan brothers' business interests, Sheriff Davis corrected, his voice dripping with disgust. I've seen enough of their version of justice to know what it looks like. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Turner's men were outnumbered now, but they still held the advantage of having hostages. Jake could feel sweat trickling down his back as he tried to remain